Welcome everybody to the Moosestaffa channel. A very special day. We have Evan from Flight Sim Expo with us today to talk about the upcoming expo and what you can expect. As you come in, feel free to type any questions you want into the chat. If you've already posted in the Discord channel, I already have those. We will make sure we get those answered to the best of our ability. Just want to say hello to those of you who are here so far. Brian Gren, Kelsey's here, Seatback Pocket. How you doing, Jason? Good to see you. Tarbridge Knight, welcome. Sebastian7064. And I see there's others coming in. As you come in, say hello in chat so we know who you are and that you're here. The images you're seeing right now are from FSExpo back in Orlando in 2019. Just a small taste of what we might be able to expect this year. Crossing our fingers. All right. Oh, good. The video is working in the right places. That's always a good sign. So, welcome everybody. My name is Moosestaffa. If you're not familiar with my channel, you may be here from getting the press release from Flight Sim Expo or from hearing about it through some other people that were kind of plugging this interview today. I am a Twitch streamer. Obviously, I normally stream Flight Sim on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. But today we're taking a break from actually playing the flight simulator, and we're going to be talking to Evan. Evan, by the way, how do you say your last name? I always feel like I'm probably butchering that.
Most people say Reiter. I say Reiter. I don't really care.
Reiter. Okay, well, good. And I think I've actually got it right. That's good. Okay. So Evan Reiter, who is one of the organizers of Flight Sim Expo, he's been helping organize these since the first Flight Sim Expo, if I'm correct, that was in Las Vegas. I think that was, 2018. Yeah, 2018. So welcome here, first of all. Good to have you. Thanks for taking the time to come and join us and talk about Expo and answer our questions. And so first, if I may, I'd just like you to tell us a little about yourself, how you're how you got involved in flight simulation and ultimately in organizing these Flight Sim Expos.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and happy to be here. Really excited to hear the questions that people from the community have. One of the things we've been doing over the past several weeks is talking to a lot of flight simulation developers, a lot of the big names that you sort of expect to see in simulation, but we don't talk as much and haven't been talking as much to the community. We don't have our own presence on Twitch or YouTube, so stuff like this is great, and appreciate that you've given us some time to talk and engage a little bit with the community. I've been around flight sim since about 2006, I want to say, and I started out knowing next to nothing about aviation and next to nothing about flight sim. I think my parents might have gotten it for me as a Christmas present, and I just remember on the very first computer, I think it probably took longer to load than it actually took to do any of the flights that I wanted to do. I remember I didn't know anything about what the GPS did, so like I used to use the heading bug and I'd try and keep it right on that magenta line. Didn't know there was a nav mode that you could follow, and I think over time I just kind of figured my way through all this stuff. Slowly got into the multiplayer world, joined some of those FSX Game Spy sessions, that Pro ATC at Juliana that we all love to tool around at 747s in, and from there on sort of found Boston Virtual AR TCC as it's now known on VATSIM, and been doing that pretty much ever since. Right now my main interest in flight sim is around the ATC and sort of the community side, so I don't fly really quite that much on the simulator, but I do a lot of stuff around our community. If it's not controlling on VATSIM, as we talked the other night on frequency, it's just sort of being around the BVA community, the VATSIM community, and trying to make sure that people who want to be able to use Flight Sim as a training aid, use it to just enhance their hobby, become a little bit more excited about flying and flying realistically, that they can do that.
Awesome, awesome. So, are you beyond the flight simulator at this point? Are you involved in? And maybe you said that in there, and I may have missed it. But are you involved in aviation in IRL at all in the real world?
Yeah, I guess sometimes I forget there's a real world anymore because I just like sit in this little office and that's like my entire life now. Yeah, so it's kind of an awkward spot for me right now. I'm back on furlough again. I was flying the Embraer 175 up until December 31st. Actually did my last flight on December
Mm,
31st and then furloughed on the 1st. So it's been a little bit of a break here. Aviation where I am is it's kind of a disaster just like it is around the rest of the world. So it's been a really good time for flight sim. I mean, it's kind of sad, as I watch the real world aviation business and my job disappear, the flight sim world has just exploded between Microsoft Flight Sim, between COVID and having everyone stuck inside, the popularity of VATSIM, the popularity of simulation, pilots who are furloughed, pilots who aren't flying GA anymore coming into the sim. So it's kind of been a tale of two worlds, but a really good time for flight sim. And honestly, it's given me a lot more time to focus on Flight Sim Expo, focus on some of the other projects that you're aware of that aren't necessarily public yet. And so it's been a bit of a blessing in disguise, as difficult as it's been over the past little while.
gotcha. So, how did you get involved in organizing these? Like, I know we kind of had a transition. My first experience with any kind of a flight simulator convention was Flight Sim Con, and that was in the year before the Vegas Expo. That was the last year they were in Connecticut and Hartford, and so I know those had been going on for a few years. And then there was this kind of weird little split that happened with some organizers, and Expo came about. So how did you get involved with doing organizing for Flight Sim Expo?
Flight Sim Expo right now is me and then a business partner, Phil Coyle. We've known each other through Boston Virtual Air TCC on VATSIM, I think since about 2008 or 9. Worked on a whole pile of different projects together, from little utilities for ATC and Flight Sim through to a big website redesign for the community, and then eventually through to Flight Sim Expo. I was involved for a while helping out with Flight Sim Con, which was sort of a half BVA and then a half sort of event manager led initiative that started out, as you mentioned, in Hartford. I forget what the first year, maybe 2016 or 2015. It was a while ago anyway. And so we helped out with a couple of those. It started out, absolutely tiny, put on basically by a BVA member and then his wife, and there were probably 40 or 50 of us, if I remember right, in the hotel ballroom in Hartford. But it was really neat. It was the first time, I think, since the AVSIM conferences going way, way back, that anything like that had been done in the US. So that was really interesting to be a part of. And then, as you mentioned, there was a little bit of a split there, sort of a disagreement on where we thought that event could go. There's some feedback that was from us saying, we thought we could take this to Vegas, we thought we could take this to some big cities, and not everyone felt the same way. So we ended up sort of doing our own thing and started Flight Sim Expo as a result of that, as you mentioned back in 2018. So Vegas was a huge success for us. I mean, we sort of went into that show thinking we might get 300 or 400 people. We sold out the venue, had to turn off ticket sales. Then, of course, in Orlando, 1,700 people in 2019, and everything going into 2020 was looking great. I mean, we had a lot of exhibitors now coming in from the real world space, people like Sporties, who, you don't think
Mm,
Sporties would come to a flight sim show, right? And of course, they were joining NATCA and the EAA and all kinds of people who do this real world professional stuff, the sim makers like Redbird. They were all coming out to our show. And then, of course, COVID happened, and then it's been a little bit of a rough ride for the past few months. But really, I think there's a ton of momentum there. And then you add the Microsoft Flight Simulator release to that. We're excited to be bringing this show back, whether it's in June, whether it's in September, whether it's online only. I think the community really wants us to do something.
yeah, I would definitely agree with that last statement. And the people that I talked to, there's a lot of people that were obviously very disappointed that it had to get canceled, obviously out of your control and with the nature of what was going on in the world. But a lot of us are looking forward to getting back to some level of normalcy with that and enjoying it. I know from my own perspective, the first time I attended any one of these, which was Flight Sim Con in Hartford, the last time they were there, I walked away from that experience just saying this is going to be a regular part of my calendar year from now on. As long as these things are happening, this has to be something that I do because it was so much fun. It was such a treat to be there and meet so many people. What I like to say from my perspective as an attendee, one of the coolest things I found at Flight Sim Con in Hartford, and it continued on through the expos, is just the amount of people interested in this as a hobby. You kind of think, I think in our own little worlds, it's like, who else is interested in Flight Simulator? Everyone else is into, the Call of Duties and the Fortnites and all that stuff. And we're kind of in our little niche. But you go to those things and you see the gamut of people, and it's from everyone from little kids who love, Flight Simulator and aviation, all the way up to there were guys probably in their 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s there at the Flight Sim Con one, that had their own little group, and they were all into Flight Simulator too, and talking about all this stuff. And it's going, do you even know how to use a computer? Like, it's
Yeah.
incredible. And then everyone in between, it just runs the gamut. We all have that kind of in common, that shared love for aviation and specifically Flight Sim with that. So this is really cool. Kind of event
Yeah,
to
it's
put
really neat
on.
when you see like all these different parts of the community come together, right? So when we're all doing our thing online as we do, some people fly on VATSIM, some people have their virtual airlines, some people have their communities around AI aircraft. Like there's just all these little, as you say, niche groups even within this
Right.
world of flight simulation that it is in itself, pretty niche. But then you sort of bring all that together at Flight Sim Expo, and it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter if you fly on VATSIM or IVAO or if you fly offline, right? We all kind of realize, oh, we're all just really passionate about flying airplanes on computers, and that's a really cool thing. So you absolutely don't see that until you bring it together. And we've done in-person small events at BVA for many years now, going back to Tea Party, which I think is going to be 21 or 22 years this year. We've had a sort of in-person meetup at a hotel, and even those, when it's only 20 or 30 people doing virtual ATC, I mean, those are just crazy fun, right? Because you're
Yeah.
doing all those things that you've done throughout the course of the year, but instead of just talking to a computer and instead of having stuff go through the headset, you're there talking to somebody. And when my colleague and friend Austin tries to vector an airplane to Boston, who's actually supposed to go into Nantucket, I just go and hit him. Like I don't have to just yell at him. I could just grab a magazine, I just smack him. It's great.
Yeah, no, and to quote one of the other streamers on here who I'm friends with, Dane Flats, he says, when you get to do, Flight Simulator is fun, but when you get to do it with friends and a community of people, it's 1,000 times better, and it's absolutely true. I was part of the Southern California ZLA group for a while. I never got past ground because I just didn't have time, I realized. But I actually went to their ZLA dinner. I think it was the year after the Flight Sim Con show, and did their F&O with them in some little dive diner place right on the
Yeah.
airport property in Santa Monica there, which there was only about probably 7 or 8 of us there, but it was so much fun to do that in
Yeah.
in a live room with people. And again, you're sharing a common experience that you've been sharing virtually, and now you can do it together. And I think really because of the COVID experience now, we've all been forced to be even more virtual around other people in our daily lives than we've been expected to. By the Flight Sim community probably dealt with that a little bit better because we're so used to that anyway.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a real draw whenever we can get back to meeting in person, whether that's this year or it's next year. I think that's going to be a real big drawback because people are going to be craving that in person experience again that they haven't been able to do for a while. So no, that's
Yeah,
really
well,
cool.
that's exactly what we're hearing. So we did a series of developer and media partner conferences. I think you were at one of those, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
back in what was it, October, November, somewhere in there, or maybe late
I don't.
September.
I actually didn't remember the date, so I was
Yeah,
glad that you have to
it's
struggle through that
somewhere
side of
in
me.
there. It
That's
was
why I picked
fall. I
those
know it
two.
was
Perfect.
fall. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I think I was on the very last one with there was another developer in there, and I can't remember who they were now. I think they were from Australia, but yeah,
Yeah.
doing these little kind of touchings with media partners and developers, kind of getting their take on there. So yeah.
Yeah, so we sort of asked them that question. We said, like, this is going again back to October, November, but just before the vaccines were released, we're sort of saying, what do you guys think, right? And if the conference was going to be held in June, would you come to that? Would you want to do it in person? What was the feeling? So the general consensus across maybe 6 or 7 of these different sessions and probably 50 or 60 of the top sponsors and exhibitors at the show, everyone's saying what you're saying, that this is really great because it's an in-person event, because we can connect in a way that we don't get to do online. And the general feedback was, let's try to preserve that. We sort of talked about, should we focus on an online experience? Should we just do online only? And maybe we really do a great job of an online only show. And everyone's saying no, like that's not the way to go, because we're already online, we're already so connected, and it's just not the same. You can't go to the bar and grab a drink with somebody. You can't shake hands with somebody. You can't, have this big group of people that you've been flying or controlling online with for the past 8 months and hang out with them. Those are just things you can't do with an online show. And so we're trying to get, we were trying to get that sense, and interested in what people here in the chat think about online versus in person. But everything I've heard so far and where we're at because of that is whatever we can do to make some kind of an in-person show happen, and the bigger the better. That's where the focus needs to be. There will be an online component. Whatever happens, people who want to attend that way can still do it. But what we're being told by everybody, and what the early registration data shows as well, is that in-person piece is really important.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree with that, because for me, I know personally I'll do whatever, but if I have the opportunity to be in person or online, it's in person every time for me. So
Yeah.
Springboarding off of that, before we get into the specifics regarding the hardships of COVID and what that means for this year and kind of things we're looking at, one of the questions I see a lot, especially right after it was announced, why San Diego?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it definitely is different now, of course, than when we were thinking
Right.
about this. And it was almost exactly a year ago today that I was in San Diego and San Antonio and a few other places looking at sites for the 2021 show. So that's how early this actually happens. This
Mm.
was a full year ago, about a year and a half before the event would have been held. And in the event planning world, that's even a little bit late. A lot of events are planned 2-3 years down the line,
Mm-hmm.
because the best venues, they do get booked up that far in
Yeah.
advance. So we looked at this basically in a year ago, trying to figure out where should our 2021 show be held. We did a series of surveys with the community, both developers, attendees. We went out to the Facebook group and did it there as well. And San Diego came back as the top choice, and it wasn't really even close. We think we asked about San Diego. I'm sure San Antonio was on there because I visited it. We had Orlando on the list as well, and again, really wasn't even close. People were very excited about that venue. I mean, I think it made a lot of sense, right? You've got pretty good transportation options, beautiful beach, great weather year round, and we had a fantastic deal there. And again, pre-COVID days, to get $150 a night, taxes in, at a San Diego hotel that's right on the tram, that's right across from a shopping mall in a great location, that's next to impossible to do. So we had, perfect timing in the life cycle of a hotel that just gone through a major renovation that was just about to be completed. It was like perfect. So kind of a, once in a lifetime shot at getting into a place that people had told us was a great spot. That was then. And of course things have changed a little bit since then, but that's really the impetus for San Diego. And I think still a great venue. I mean, the space in this particular hotel, I think it was about a $90 million renovation that they did. Totally new pool, water park, like just all kinds of great things. And then again, you're right there on the trolley. So you want to go to downtown, you can do that for like $2. Very easy to get to and from the airport. There's a super big mall right across the street, just like a ton of things to do right there. And then of course you have all the other attractions, right? So the Midway Museum, and then the zoo, Balboa Park. There's just all kinds of really great things that city has to offer in normal non-COVID times anyway.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. The and story of the day, when you know when things are not with COVID, everything's changing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So let me
And
ask you. Yeah, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was just gonna say
Yeah.
it almost doesn't really matter too, like where you are. And we're gonna talk a lot about this, and I get a lot of emails. You should move it to Texas. You should move it to Vegas, and we could do that, right? That's totally something that we'd look at doing if we had to. But for us right now, it's less about the restrictions and it's more about who's going to come to this show. And for a lot of the developers, especially the ones from Europe, it doesn't matter if it's in San Diego or if it's in Texas, like it's the same to them. It's in
Yeah.
America, right? So
Right.
for a lot of people that are coming from overseas, it's a totally different question. And the reality is, here in our sim world, about 60% of our developers are located overseas, maybe even more. You
Mm-hmm.
think about the big ones like Orbix and Aerosoft, Navigraph, a lot of them are outside of the US. So when you want to get, Orbix to bring 25 people to this show, that's a very difficult thing to do right now. And whether you hold it in Texas or you hold it in San Diego isn't going to change that for them.
Right.
So for us, the biggest question right now is, I know there were some questions that came up. We could talk about, restrictions and tiers and everything else. It's more about if we can do something that lets those developers come. And if we can do something that gets 60 exhibitors instead of 30, let's do that something. And that's what we're really trying to focus on, is building a really big in-person event in whatever way we can. And again, if that means moving the event, that means pushing it to later in the year, those are all things we're prepared to consider.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense. So you kind of answered one of the biggest challenges right there. I was going to ask you what kind of challenges are you facing this year with regard to COVID, and I guess probably one of the biggest is the fact that a lot of those developers, the exhibitors, are not in the United States, and as we all know, travel between countries right now is extremely difficult, sometimes impossible, and if it is available, then a lot of times it involves a long quarantine after you get to your destination, and that increases costs and all kinds of other things. So, are there any besides that though? Are there any other thing? I mean, I guess one of the bigger things from a California standpoint specifically, I know this was asked in one of the Discord channels, was about the tiers. You know, here in California, we've got this kind of colored tier system of how many, people can meet versus capacity numbers in a given space and under these certain tiers. And right now, pretty much the entire state is in what we know as the purple tier, which is the most extreme level. And the numbers do continue to go down, which is good. And so hopefully by the time we get closer to June, that will be have leveled off significantly, especially with the vaccine. But, how does that kind of play into your factors as well as we look at that?
So some of the big ones we're looking at are the Sun and Fun show, which is supposed to happen in March, and then there's also HAI Heli Expo, which is a big indoor show that's planned for New Orleans, I think also in March. So those are two really big events that we're looking at, seeing how they work if they go on as planned, and that'll be an interesting indicator for us as we look at how things are in June. Again, for us, I think it's more of a question of which developers would come, how comfortable would attendees feel being at a show. Do people want to be there wearing masks if that's what has to happen? And those are more of the questions we're asking than we're dealing so much with the public health restrictions. I think the plan is, you just comply with those as best you can. But as we see more things opening up, as we see people going to sporting events, as we see people going to NBA and NHL games, those are the kinds of things that we want to watch for. And if we find that there's, certain places that allow that and others that don't, maybe you look at moving to those places. But again, then the question is how many attendees are going to be willing to do that? How many developers are going to be willing to do that? And of course, the international piece is a big one, but we have domestic issues too. I mean, we are watching lawmakers now talking about what about domestic testing for flying just within the country. That would be awful for the airline industry, and it'd be awful for events like us.
Right.
That's probably the biggest challenge. Is like COVID is one thing, and keeping everyone safe, which is sort of the priority. But the other thing is just how do you plan anything in this world? And I feel so bad for all kinds of local businesses and small business owners because every day it seems like the rules are changing. Nobody really knows anything anywhere. And you have this threat of new variants and you have the vaccine. And it's so difficult to keep up with any of these changes. So all of that uncertainty, I think, is probably the biggest challenge more than anything else. And as we were talking about just before the stream, how do you plan for anything, right? Because anytime you say, well, we want to make this decision, that could be different tomorrow. And that's never been something we've had to deal with. This show since 2018, especially moving into the most recent year into 2020, we kind of have the idea of how do you run a flight sim show. You have to do this, there, this, then, this, then. Right? You can kind of follow those steps. And of course, there's things that come up along the way, but it definitely gets easier having done it 3 times. This year, we're totally flying by the seat of our pants. And I have done that in a real airplane, just closed my eyes and tried to fly straight and level. It doesn't work. And it's just the same thing with flight sim conference planning. The really big challenge for us this year is all the uncertainty. And so, those public health restrictions, they'll matter if they say we can't hold the show. But even if the state of California opens up, or even if we move it to Texas, I think you still have a problem where if there's only 10 exhibitors that are willing to show up, are attendees going to want that? And are people going to say, I'm happy that I traveled all this distance to only have a couple of exhibitors here? Or do they come in and say, well, this was a waste of time. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have spent this one travel or one trip that I might have this year on a show that really didn't work. So I think that's what we're worried about. For me, I feel like any excuse to get out of the house would be great. So if you told me, you could go to anywhere tomorrow and there'd be 10 exhibitors, I'd be like, hey, if there's more than 5 people, that's more than I've talked
Right.
to all year. But again, we're just trying to figure out how do we bring as many people as we can together in a way that's safe and in a way that's fun for everybody.
Absolutely. That makes sense. On that same side of things, is there a specific deadline or cutoff that you guys have to make a decision for? Like, let's say we keep it with June. Was there a specific date or a time frame when you guys have to say, yes, this is when we have to know that we can be in person, or this is when we have to know we have to be online only, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think attendees obviously want that certainty, right? And unfortunately, these days, A lot of travel is changeable for free. The hotel, you can get a refund 48 hours prior, and our registrations were being totally flexible. So anyone can change or cancel those free of charge. So we're trying to give as much flexibility as we can, but I also realize people have got to plan their lives. So the intention here is next month in March, we're going to go out and have another round of those conversations with developers. And the intention is to go in with attendee registration data. So people who are looking at our website right now, who are registering right now, you guys make a huge difference, because if I can go to those developers and say, look, we have so many people registered for the in-person, so many people registered for online, and these aren't just theoretical survey answers, they've really registered, they're going to be there. That's a huge point for me to help bring those exhibitors and those developers to the show. So we have those conversations in March. We'll couple that with an attendee survey as well as a broader survey of the community. And then I think the hope is by mid-April, end of April by the latest, you really need a decision. Are we going to go forward with a June event, whatever the size is going to be? Are we going to move the event online but keep the dates the same? Or are we going to move the event to September, October, November, somewhere later in the year where you hope there's going to be a bit more vaccine efficacy, where you think you can still do that online piece, but the in-person can be bigger? So I think that's kind of what we're looking at, is that April, middle of or end of April type timeframe. We want to be able to definitively say, yes, we're doing something. And what that something is right now is really going to depend on what feedback we get from the community over the next little while. And open to seeing what people have to say about that, and questions in the chat here as we go. But I think that's the real challenge for us, is we want to be as loose and flexible as we can, but we have to make a point where we say, all right, this is it, this is what we are going to do. And pending anything else that comes up between now and then, I think that's the plan, is sort of mid-April to the end of April.
Gotcha. So the takeaway from that, for those of you watching this, and this will be posted on YouTube. So for those of you that watch this in the next, hopefully, few weeks, is if you want to see Flight Sim Expo go forward, and you want to make sure it's an in person, and have a good component like that. The key is to start registering now. And like Evan said, they're going to be super flexible with registrations if the event has to cancel or if it has to move. So there, don't let that uncertainty at this stage kind of keep you from hitting that registration button, because that data is going to help them go to developers and say, look at all these people that, if it's held in June right now, are telling you we are coming because we've already signed up. It's not just yeah, we'd go if if it gets held. And it's easy to say yes in a survey. It's a lot different to say yes and I've signed up and I paid. They're not even going to charge. I think I saw in your press release, you're not even charging the credit cards right away, right? You're just holding the registration info, and we'll do
Yep.
those later. Yeah.
Yep. So
So
you've got to put a credit card number down, because, as you said, I don't want survey data that
right.
someone says yes, they're going to go, and then when the rubber hits the road, they change their mind. You're putting a credit card down. You are registering for the show, but we also recognize things can change. So we're not charging any credit cards until that point we talked about in mid-April, when we can say, all right, this is the plan. Here's what's happening. Now your credit card's been charged. But as you point out, going to developers with really hard data, here's how many people are saying they're going to go to this show in June. That's huge. And I can tell you, here we are just about a day and a half after we open registration, we're over 200 people. That's already a great
Wow.
number.
That's impressive.
Typically, we start our registration usually in December, and it usually takes us a couple days to hit that 200 mark, even when we have a discount. This year, we're just charging the standard $70 per registration, and we're there at 206 as of right now. So that's awesome,
That's
and we
awesome.
need that to keep going. Again, if we can say to developers, well, we have 2,000 people registered for the online show, that's meaningful for them. Now they're going to be willing to make that investment. If I can't go to them with that, if I have to say, well, we think there's all these people excited about the show, but we just don't know, now it's a much more difficult conversation. And so you're right, to support the show, if you don't think you're going to be there, register for the online only portion. It's $15. It doesn't cost you very much. You're going to get great access to seeing all the presentations live streamed. You're going to access booths, video booths with exhibitors, where you can actually talk one-on-one, just like we're doing with a couple other attendees in the room with a specific developer. You'll have the access to all kinds of product discounts, videos about different exhibitors' products. So if you're thinking you won't come to the show, that's a great way to do it. And of course, if you are ready to make that commitment, register for the in-person show. And either way, free to change between those two categories. The key message here is there's no reason not to register this year, because you can't say, well, I don't know if I'd ever go to San Diego. We've got that online option, and it's going to happen. Whatever happens to the in-person show, there will be an online component people can participate in.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. So again, that answers one of the questions I'd seen in the Discord, which was if something changes or suddenly they can't because of travel or something, they have to switch to the online. How flexible is that to switch from the in person to the online? And from what I'm hearing, it's extremely flexible and very easy to do that. So,
Yep,
so
exactly.
don't wait. Go sign up after this is done. Don't go now because I don't want to lose my viewers. But but when this is done, you'll see at the top there. There's the link up there at the top, flightsimexpo.com. That's where you can go sign up. There's a lot of information there, obviously, on what it's looked like in the past and what we can hopefully expect as we continue to plan forward. Just want to take a quick pause, real quick, in this and just kind of say hellos to some other people that showed up. Encrypted Pilot, welcome back here. Chili Willy's, always good to see you, my friend. And Amy Ann, of course, welcome. And Kithrick, also known as Kevin, good to see you as well. Complete Freedom, how you doing? Welcome here. Again, if you guys have questions you'd like to have answered, go ahead and put them in the chat. I just saw someone say, I have a question, and then I just saw, what's up? So don't just say you have a question, actually post the question. I cannot read your mind as much as you may think I can. Yeah, as we continue on here, if you have questions, let us know how we can answer those. Again, what I'm hearing, I think the theme from Flight Sim Expo this year, to their credit, is flexibility. Because again, there's so much unknown, and we don't want to we don't want to lock everybody in and say, well, we have to do this, and then you get screwed. So that's not the goal here. The goal here is to try and put on an awesome event. We need that data. To do that, they need the registrations to convince the developers this is worth investing in this year. We wouldn't normally probably have to convince them of that going in from 2019, a year ago, but COVID has changed the name of the game, and so obviously we need that data. So if you are thinking about coming, if you're first of all, if you're thinking about coming, you should just do it. I can tell you from experience. I've been to 1, 2, 3 of these now. It would have been 4 in this last year if it wasn't canceled. But it's an amazing time of just being able to. You get to hang out with fellow flight sim enthusiasts. So there are already people that are on the same level as you are as far as enthusiastic for flight sim. You get to meet developers of products that you either use or might be interested in using and give them direct feedback into either what you think they should be pouring into. Maybe it's stuff that you're realizing, hey, this was an awesome piece of equipment or software, but it's doing this, and if they could just fix this one thing, it would be amazing. Well, you can tell them that to their face, and that goes a lot further than you yelling at them on a forum and they just assume you're just some random person. So there's that. There's often these seminars that are headed up by people in various levels of expertise in either the sim world or IRL as far as aviation is concerned. And those are always a lot of fun, very informative. And so and then the Captain's Corner thing. Can you explain a little bit about the Captain's Corner thing? That was a new thing last time in Orlando. Kind of talk about what that is.
Yeah, that was funny. Again, one of those things we thought, okay, maybe we'll get a couple people like 25, 30 to show up to this Captain's Corner thing, and we had 500 when we did that in Orlando. So hugely successful, and we kept that going, plan to do it in 2020. Again, doing it this year. Captain's Corner is this add-on that we've done on the Friday before the show, and it really came about because we realized lots of people were there anyway. So why don't we give them something to do on that Friday? We can't open the exhibit hall because exhibitors need some time for setup, but there's great opportunity to add even more educational content. So we built this Captain's Corner as let's find the content that's really interesting to the in-depth simmer. So how do I actually, build my own hardware components for the sim? How do I upgrade my hardware to give me the best possible experience? How do I get into the FMC and X-Plane? Stuff that's, not your average beginner kind of content, but stuff that's really designed for the in-depth hardcore simmer who wants to learn more about getting the best experience, especially when it comes to hardware, PCs, systems, that kind of area. And so that's what Captain's Corner is designed to be. And the great thing with the online only registration this year is there's no additional charge for Captain's Corner. So when you register for that $15, you're getting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 3 days worth of seminars, plus access to all of those recorded post-show as well. So great value there. For the in-person attendee, if you wanted to come down to Captain's Corner just to help us cover the cost of the hall, it's just $10 for that extra day of seminars. And there's 4 on there right now. You can find those all on the website. There may be a 5th one to come depending on how much interest we get, and of course depending what happens with developers. And we hope to see that start to build out a little bit more as we get a little bit closer to the show. Of course, we've also published our Saturday and Sunday seminar schedule on the website as well, and a lot of names from last year that I was excited to see come back, but a lot of really cool new stuff that we're seeing this year as well.
That's awesome. So there was a question on here. The one who said I had a question and said huzzah or whatever it was, but asking about companies. Will there be any companies announcing new products at the show? I can probably kind of answer that for Evan in the sense that they're still working on who the developers will be that are there. Period. So I would imagine it's usually a great place for developers to do that. They've announced stuff like that in the past. So if there are developers that are coming out with new products, a lot of times this is a fantastic platform for them to do that. But I don't think there's any information on that at this time. Am I correct?
Yeah, I guess that's the right idea. So we try to encourage developers to make shows like ours and Cosford and Lelystad to be the shows where they come out with announcements. And it's sometimes hard to do that because obviously when you're a developer, you finally got a product ready. You don't want to wait even 2 days. You want it just out the door. So I appreciate that. But we're really trying to build that concept with developers to say, look, this is your platform because you've got 2,000 people coming to this show. Give them something interesting. So we developed the sponsor exhibitor seminar concept for the 2019 Orlando show, and it was very well received. And we're planning to do that same thing again. So there'll be 9 different seminars that developers can sign up for, 30 minutes each, specifically designed to give an update on what they're doing and tell you about a new product of theirs. Those aren't on the website yet because, as Mike says, we're still waiting to see who's going to come in person, who's going to be presenting remotely. Of course, this year developers can present remotely. So if someone wanted to do that developer seminar and announce a big product, but they're not coming to the show, they'll actually be able to do that. And for the online attendees, you'll of course watch it just like we're watching this. For the in-person attendees, we may even decide to just live stream that right into the actual seminar hall, and you'll basically sit in the room, watch the movie of the person who's presenting this story. So we'll see how that all plays out in the next couple of months, but we really strongly encourage developers to bring their news to these shows. Typically, you see a lot of new product releases, a lot of updates from the simulator makers and from developers. So we expect that same thing to happen again.
Gotcha. There was a little joke, a little jab in the chat, real quick about the Microsoft 2020 announcement right at the end,
Yeah.
after Expo ended in Orlando from E3, which was hilarious because it was just an hour after, and everyone's kind of buzzing around, going, "Wait, what just happened?"
Yep. And that surprised everyone. I mean, I was in the lobby of the hotel in Orlando. I forget. I think I was there with Orbix, Aerosoft, and a couple of other people, and we were at a table, and sort of someone pulled out their phone, and they're like, "What the heck is this?" Right? So it took all of us by surprise. I'm still, I don't want to say mad, but I mean, it was a weird move. I don't know
Yeah,
why, for a simulator that says they're all about the community, and then they talk a lot in their press releases about being community driven. There was the opportunity to prove that, right? So
right.
I think we were all a little bit taken aback by that one.
Yeah, that was funny. I was probably not too far from you when that happened because I was down the hotel lobby at the same time with a group of people, and everyone's phones started going off of going, "Wait,
Yeah, yeah,
what is happening?" The Discord
yeah.
servers were starting to pop off with everything. So yeah,
Yep.
that was a crazy time. There was another question in here. Let me see where we go. Oh, from Seatback Pocket, Jason asks if the vaccine is out of emergency status, will it be required for attendees? That was question part one. Will masks be required inside the expo hall regardless of California's current requirements? And finally, will on-site temperature checks be performed at the door?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of these sort of, I'll call them technical and public health type things. Those are things really the venue is going to decide more than we will. The venues in these cases are really the responsible party for how they handle things. So it's going to more than us be up to the hotel. I have a very tough time seeing them mandating a vaccine unless things significantly change between now and even the end of the year. It's doubtful to see that happening anywhere in the U.S. I would say. So I don't think you're going to see that. Masks are a difficult one to answer right now, and again, that's going to be something the venue has to deal with. So if they're enforcing that for their own staff members, and if they're enforcing that for guests, those will be the questions that we'll ask them, and it'll probably all be more dependent on the time. But I think I would see the hotel doing that and enforcing that more than us, and we would stick with, it is their space, it is their venue, it's their guests and their staff that are there, so they need to protect those people. From our perspective at Flight Sim Expo, we do the same thing. So our staff, our volunteers, we can tell them what to to do, but we really don't have control over what attendees choose to do unless they're making a scene or being difficult. I think we would generally just follow what the hotel has in terms of guidelines, and those also are just basically changing. Seems like by the hour
Right.
at this point. So we'll keep an eye on things and get a better sense as to that when we get closer. But we don't anticipate putting anything in place beyond what the hotel would do for other conventions, other conferences that they're having in their space.
Right. Good. Good. Yeah, I can tell you from my own opinion. I was talking about this. For those of you that don't know, my day job is I'm a facility manager at a church in town, and so we're dealing with a lot of these issues as well as to what levels we see requirements for masks and vaccines and stuff like that from a large gathering spot. And so, just in talking with my boss the other day, kind of our thought is the very last thing to probably go when it comes to these kind of restrictions and code kind of things is probably going to be masks, because they're the easiest thing to just you put on a mask and you do your thing. Everything else, the waiting periods, the temperature check, all that other stuff is a lot more invasive, a lot more kind of time consuming and people intensive. But it's really easy to say, hey, wear a mask when you're inside. And so I feel like that's probably going to be the last restriction to go of this whole thing as things slowly begin to taper off as the vaccine becomes more and more prevalent and things like that. So will we be there in June? Who knows? But if you know, let us know, because I'd love to know.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I saw a comment saying, I wish that we could take a tougher stance on this issue. I mean, we don't have a stance on this issue because this is 3 months down the line, and what's happening where I am 3 days ago is different rules than what's happening today. So we're not going to have a stance on that at this point. It doesn't make any sense to do that, but we will when the time comes. So as we're there in May and the beginning of June, we'll be talking to the hotel. We'll be very clear about that. If they say to us, here's the rules for the hotel, everyone has to wear a mask, that's going to be the rule at Flight Sim Expo, and you won't be let in the door if you're not wearing a mask. If they say to us masks are recommended, which I sort of think is what's going to happen, then that's what we're going to say as well. So we're planning to be 100% clear on that. I don't want someone to show up and find out that something that they should have had isn't there. So we'll be very clear about that, as I think we've done a pretty good job of doing in the past with our logistics info. But we're not going to tell you what's going to happen today in June because I can't see that far ahead. And hey,
Right.
as Mike says, if you can see that, let me know and tell me if we're doing an in-person event, because it'll make my life so much easier if someone could tell me that right now.
Right. As a reminder, this time last year in February, nothing was shut down yet. Nothing. I was
in San Diego. I was doing this site visit.
He was
for
going
this
around
show.
looking for the show.
We were talking at a restaurant, actually. We're kind of like, I was laughing with one of the hotel people, and he's like, oh yeah, I mean, I've seen stuff like this before. It's all going to be over in a few weeks. And I'm like, that's what I thought too, right? So,
and that's what I was. If you can go back and watch, if the VODs are still around, I was preaching the exact same thing, because I've seen us go through the SARS scare and other things, avian flu and all that stuff comes out, and it's big news for a few weeks, and then it kind of just goes away. And this did not do that. This stayed around. This did the whole Spanish flu deal, and it went nuts. And by the end of March, we had a meeting at the church the week before in March that said, oh yeah, no, we're holding the course, nothing's changing, we're fine. And the very next day, we were having a staff meeting, and everyone was recommending shut it down. I mean, that happened that fast. And then it stayed shut down. We went from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to now. So, anyone that claims they can predict what's going to happen in June by now, I've got some, land to sell you somewhere. So,
even when we announced the cancellation of the event, and that was like mid-April, so we're ways into this at that point. When we canceled the event, we're doing the 2021 All Access Pass, and we're saying, this will be over by the end of the summer. Everyone's telling us, yes, I'll be there next year, right? And now we're actually here 6 or 7 months later applying the All Access Pass for people, and we're saying, do you still think that? Even though we were very clear when we asked them about it the first time, we said, you can't ever get a refund. You're opting in to come into 2021. You're making a decision. We said we weren't going to give refunds. Now here we are, and I'm like, well, I can't tell someone what they told me in June is still, valid right now, because the world's totally changed. What I thought was going to happen didn't happen. I'm sure there's people out there who would have said last April that they would for sure come to Expo 2021, and now might be thinking, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. So we want to be totally flexible, totally transparent. We want attendees to know how many exhibitors are going to show up, who's going to be there to speak, who's going to speak remotely. None of this is a secret. I can tell you how many registrations we have. It probably hasn't. Let's just see if it's changed since we started talking here. It's 206 as of an hour ago, right? We'll be 100% transparent on that, so you guys can make a decision that makes sense for you. And I'm not here to say you have to come to the show this year. I'm not here to say you have to do online only. I'm saying take the information. We'll give you whatever you want to know and make a decision that's right for you.
Yeah. Well, and again, yeah. So the Expo Nitmedge, I think you were probably responding to this guy a little bit with regards to the tougher stance on the issue. Yeah, there is no this whole thing is loose answers, right? Because there's so much unknown. You have to plan so far in the future to run these things and to get everybody involved. I would love for some people to be able to see the behind the scenes. Events like this do not organize themselves. There is so much that goes on, and making sure all the logistics are handled and you have the right people that are coming to the event to draw the right crowds, and those crowds draw the right people. I mean, it's all this back and forth that goes into making these things happen. And you throw in something like COVID, where the restrictions and the requirements for what can and can't go on change not by the month but by the week, and you just don't know from one week to the next. You've got governors that are making arbitrary decisions based on, essentially pseudoscience, because they're going off of science from things they've known in the past. They're making political decisions at the same time based on their future because they don't want to piss people off, because they don't want to get voted out of office. And all those things coalesce together to make an environment where no one really knows in a month from now what necessarily the picture will look like, much less 4 months from now. So my urging would be for those of you that have the very strong opinions of, you just put your foot down and plow forward. Take a step back and think of it from their perspective, because it's not that easy. They could do that, and they'll be meeting all by themselves with a card table in a room somewhere, and it will not be fun. So,
Yeah, there is a lot, that I've learned in the past year and a half about this stuff that we would never have had to think about in the past, and things about, insurance and event cancellation, and even what happens in a scenario where we go back to sort of midway through March, when the sports leagues were all closing down kind of right after St. Patrick's Day last year. We're sitting here going, well, we have a hotel contract that's worth, into the six figures in terms of our obligations to the hotel if we were to pull out of this event at this point. And we have a very tough rope to walk, because we can't just come out and say, we're going to cancel the show. The hotel's going to, if in fact this pandemic is 2 or 3 weeks long, the hotel is going to come after us and say, you guys made the decision to cancel the show. You could have gone on,
right.
Let's have all the money that you owe us from all those rooms that you booked.
Exactly.
On the other hand, you have people in the community saying, of course, this is never going to happen. You should cancel it. You should cancel it. What are you waiting for? There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. We're trying to keep everybody informed, but trying to keep everybody happy as well. I remember there were lots of long nights and late discussions. I'm sure you had the same thing, Mike, with the church. Those days around March where you're just like, you could spend 3 hours talking about it one day, think you've got a decision, then you look at the news the next day and you're like, oh, well, crap.
Yep.
Doesn't work
there goes
anymore.
That decision. That doesn't matter anything. Yeah, exactly. And that's the biggest thing is, it's easy to make a decision for just the ease of making the decision, but there's other things, that dependencies like hotel insurance and your obligations to them. And if you cancel because you just want to cancel and it turns out you didn't have to cancel, then that comes back on you, and the hotel says, yeah, pony up. And now this organization is out a whole ton of money because they've got to refund that. So it's not an easy decision at all. And there is no, at the end of the day, there's no right answer to any of this. That's I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from COVID is there is no blanket answer that solves anything. It's a little bit of everything in moderation. And so going to one extreme or the other, I don't want to wear a mask and I don't want to do anything versus I'm going to stay in my house and not talk to anyone for 3 years. Both of those have problems. And both of them are not really tenable in a situation like
and
this.
We've gotten both those. So we've gotten emails from attendees literally saying both of those things, saying COVID is not real. I have never worn a mask since the beginning of this, and I'm not going to, and you can't stop me. I've gotten emails like that, and I've gotten emails saying, you guys are nuts to run a show in 2021, maybe in 2025 when this is all over. Someone wrote to me the other day, and it's from all over the world, right? So, here in the US, we have all kinds of different opinions, but then you go more broadly than that. You talk to people in different parts of the world. I talked to some people in Europe. They have the same opinion of this is ridiculous. Masks shouldn't be here. This whole thing is a media PR stunt. And I talk to other people in Europe who say, no way am I ever going to the US because that's where COVID comes from. So we get everything from people all around the world and all kinds of extremes. And so really appreciate anyone who's there saying, I don't think either extreme is right. And we're just going to try and give everyone the information that we can about masks and about exhibitors and about speakers. We'll try and give you all the information that we have. And as I think someone just said, safety is grassroots. That's the same with the decision making. I'm not here saying you have to come to Flight Sim Expo. Nobody's going to hold your feet to the fire. We're not going to take your registration money if you choose not to attend. You have the choice. We'll give you the information, and we hope that you do something that basically makes you happy and makes you feel comfortable. And if that's attending the online only show, we would really appreciate the support. If that's not attending at all, fair enough. We understand. All we can do is play the hand that we're dealt and try to give people some kind of experience. I would love if that experience looked like Orlando. That's the dream goal, is to have 2,500 people back and be hanging out in a bar together. Can we really do that? Well, if we can't, we do the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just going to go through here and double check and see if there's any questions here that I've missed that I want
I
to
saw
make sure
somebody
get
asked
asked.
about registrations being carried over. I forget who it was.
Oh, that was Sean, I think.
Yeah, so also a good question. If you opted not to receive a refund back in 2020, then you would have gotten an email from us about the 2021 All Access Pass. And if you didn't answer that email, we would have done what you told us, which is applied those fees to 2021. If you're not sure, the best way to check is just send me an email, info@flightsimexpo.com. If you haven't specifically opted in, generally what we did is we refunded everybody for 2020. My girlfriend and I had a nice afternoon in May. We just made some sangria. We went through. We spent like 7 hours, literally going one by one, canceling and refunding people. It was great. So very very sad, but
It's
also
like
it
a
got
nice
pretty fun by the
afternoon.
end of it. Yeah, so that was exciting. She's very happy that I made her do that.
I bet she is.
So anyway, yeah, most people would have been refunded. If you're not sure, just send us an email. We'll check for you. Don't register twice, obviously. So if you're not sure, find out, double check your credit card statements. But for most people, if you didn't specifically tell us, we've given you a refund. And if you chose to, and we're very grateful for those who did, you're probably going to get a pretty good deal on your registration this year, because you might have paid $50 last year and you're actually going to get $90 in value because you get the whole event free this year if you chose to skip the refund.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, yeah. So again, any last questions to put in chat? Let me just kind of go through here real quick and see some things here. First of all, 135 Boomer and Phase Text, thank you for the follows. I have muted the alerts just while we're doing this because we wouldn't possibly get inundated with Statler and Waldorf yelling about sarcasm. But thank you for hitting that follow button. If you're new to the channel, that you came out here to see this interview, I would encourage you to hit the follow button. I do stream Flight Simulator, P3D, X-Plane, and stuff like that. Generally Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and we've got a good community here. Sim Caesar, no, we cannot start over. I have a feeling you've been here this whole time and you're just trolling me. So, but the VOD will be available on Twitch for this for I think it's like 60 days. Twitch has it up after the 24-hour restriction that Twitch puts in place because I'm an affiliate. I'll be uploading it to my YouTube channel as well, so you guys have an opportunity to go back and rewatch this and link to it. And Evan, feel free if you want to link to that for any of your press stuff. That free to use for Expo and for any event issues that you would like. So, let's see. Thank you for. Let's see. Can you save this as a highlight and then it'll never be? Well, I don't think you can. I don't think the highlights can be this long. I think I tried that one time. The highlights have a time restriction. I thought I'll look at that, but like I said, it'll be up in perpetuity on the YouTube channel because it won't get taken down from there. So. Let's see. I think that is covering it for the most part. No, there's probably not going to be a mosh pit. Moneyball. So, Evan, I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to do this and sit down with me and talk about Expo. If I can leave you guys with anything, it would be that if you can attend this year or foresee yourself possibly attending, please do it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great event. The Flight Sim community as a whole is just a great community. And if the more you're involved in it, whether that's on Twitch, on VatSim, on IVAO, on Discord, wherever, the more places you are, the more you see that, and it's just really fun to do that in person with people if we can. So, to Evan's point earlier, the more advanced registration we can get going into March, the better, because that will make a stronger case for them, putting toward the developers that, hey, look, there's all these people that, if we can, are rearing to go, and they've committed already to say we're going to be there, whether that's in online form or in person form. So that'll help convince those guys to do it. Because again, an event with 60 developers is a lot better than an event with 30 or 10. So the more the better, the more the better. And then you get those announcements of what's coming out. You get to see the products like the honeycomb, the alphas and the bravos and all the hardware fun stuff that we got to play with last time at Orlando, year and a half ago at Orlando, and stuff like that. Sim Caesar, thank you for the gift sub to Chili Willy's. Such a good supporter of the channel, even if you were late. So yeah, and Fly 787, to answer your question real quick, I am planning, I will be there in person if it happens in person, no matter what other restrictions are in place. I will be there, but I'm planning to probably go down starting that Thursday and be there through that Monday. So I'm in California, so it's just a drive for me. I don't have to worry about air travel this time, which is why it was also nice for Vegas. I can just hop in the car and go in my own time. So, but yeah. So Evan, any last thoughts you'd like to add before we close it out?
I think you basically said it all. Like we said before, registration right now helps tremendously. So if you think you want to come in person, register. If you think you want to participate online and you're not sure, register for the online only portion. It's $15. We won't even charge your credit card until March, April, May, sometime later this year. And it's a great opportunity to connect with the flight sim world. You're not going to get the chance anywhere else to be hearing from 30 or 40 developers, to be hearing that great schedule of seminars that we have. All the information is on our website, FlightSimExpo.com. Encourage you to join the mailing list. We're not out there on Twitch. We are on Facebook and Twitter. I don't like using either of those, so email's great for me. But honestly, this stuff is great too. Really happy to be out here talking with the community. And the biggest thing we can do is just engage, give us that support. Register, whether it's online only, whether it's in person, join the mailing list, engage with us on social media, and talk in your Discord channels. Help spread the word about this within our flight simulation community. Again, this is a year where you could see 10 or 20,000 people joining an online show. Wouldn't that be something if we actually had Orbix out there doing an online live webinar to 20,000 people at once talking about a product release? Will we ever get there? I don't know, but this would be a great year for it. So please spread the word, talk about the online registration, encourage people to come out in person. There's a great opportunity to bring the community together. I think it's something that we all would love to be able to do. So encourage you to do that, share the word within your own networks, and engage with us too.
Absolutely. Awesome, Evan. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Evan, if you wouldn't mind sticking around just until I've ended the stream, I just want to chat with you briefly at the end here, once we're offline. Guys, stick around. We're going to go ahead and find someone to raid in the Flight Sim community, because that's what we do here as we end. But thank you so much for coming out and asking your questions and just being here to support this. It's a lot of fun to be able to do this with Evan and just have a close working relationship with Flight Sim Expo, which is near and dear to my heart. So thank you guys once again for coming out, and we will see you for the next stream. We're going to stream tomorrow on Sunday after the Sim Caesar stream. We'll see you then. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Take care.